Jungkook slowly advanced toward her. Waning instinctively backed away in fear. Her eyes welled up with tears, and soon she was sobbing uncontrollably. Something in her vulnerability seemed to jolt Jungkook back to his sense. In a strained, low voice, he said, "Jungkook, go to the other room." The command was barely uttered before one rushed out of the bedroom. One's heart pounded wildly. Her hands trembled as she stumbled toward the sofa in the corner and collapsed onto it. Her mind was spinning, her breath uneven. On the other side of the house, Jungkook walked straight into the bathroom. He turned the shower on full blast and stood beneath the water, unmoving. No matter how long the water poured over him, the heat in his body refused to subside. An hour passed before he stepped out, his skin pale and lips pressed into a tight line. He reached for his phone on the nightstand and dialed a number. A few seconds later, someone on the other end picked up. "Jungkook, keep hitting him until he talks. I want every details. Who is the mastermind behind all this? Whose order is he following? I want answer by tonight." He hung up. Then, without a word, he lay down on the bed, staring at the empty space beside him. His mind wandered into shadows on no one had permission to enter. Whatever he was thinking, he gave no clues. The next morning, Wine was still laying in the nursery. She hadn't truly slept, just drifted in and out of restless movement. When morning came, she opened her eyes and looked over at the babies. They were still fast asleep. She quietly got up to freshen up herself. She stepped in cautiously. The room was empty. A breath of relief escaped her lips. She quickly used the bathroom and hurried out, no lingering for a second longer than she had to. The day passed slowly. Wine remained in the nursery the entire time, too frightened to leave. She stayed close to the children, clinging to the comfort of their presence. She hadn't seen Jungkook all day. That night, she finally stepped out, needing to return to her room to change. She slipped inside quickly, changed into a fresh outfit, and was about to leave when the door swung open. Jungkook walked in. Wine froze. Her heart skipped a beat. She instinctively turned to flee, but the door was already shut behind him. She had now had to run. Then she noticed something unexpected. Jungkook was holding a large bouquet of fresh flowers and a gift wrap package. He came towards her slowly and extended the items. "Jungkook, these are for you," he said simply, without waiting for a response. He turned and walked into the bathroom. One stood still, stunned. What just happened? She stared at the flower and the box in her hands, unable to process the moment. The sound of running water from the bathroom finally snapped her back into reality. She muttered under her breath, "Seriously, the mafia boss gave me flowers, but not a single sorry, just handed them over like that. One simple apology. Was that too hard?" Curious, she opened the gift box. Inside was a stunning dress, luxurious, elegant, and in a color she loved. Tucked beside it was a beautifully wrapped box of chocolates, her absolute favorites. Wine being in disbelief. "Whoa, this dress is exactly my style, and the color perfect. These chocolates, how does he even know I love them? What is this? Ah, never mind. None of this can undo the pain." Still grumbling, she placed the gifts aside. She carefully arranged the flower in a crystal vase and set it by the window. Then she crawled into bed. Jungkook emerged from the bathroom a while later. He saw Wine already laying down, the flower thoughtfully placed in a vase. He didn't say a word. He lay down beside her in silence. Then, without even realizing it, his gaze settled on her for a while, and soon he drifted into sleep. Morning light streamed gently through the curtains. One started awake and sat up on the edge of the bed, her hair tousled, eyes still adjusting to the day. Just then, the bathroom door cracked open. Jungkook stepped out. Wine froze, her mouth parted slightly in shock. He wore nothing but a towel loosely wrapped around his waist. Droplets of water still clung to his skin, glistening as they trailed slowly down his chest and shoulders. His well and defined muscle flexed slightly with each step, and the sharp ridge of his six-pack were hard to miss. He looked dangerously handsome, confident, effortless, and completely unaware of the fact he was having, or perhaps completely aware. A flush of crimson spread across Wine's cheek as her gaze dropped. Embraced and overwhelmed by the sudden view, she quickly looked away. Jungkook met her eyes briefly, his face unreadable, before heading straight to the wardrobe to change, completely unfazed. As if this was nothing unusual, Wine didn't say a word. She quickly stood up and walked out of the room. Her step hurried, her chest felt tight, her breath uneven. She entered the nursery. Her heart was pounding uncontrollably. Placing a hand on her chest, she whispered to herself, "Calm down. How fast do you intend to race?" But her heart refused to listen, drumming louder with each second. Moments later, a maid entered the room. "Maid, ma'am, sir is calling you." With a respectful nod, the maid exited as quietly as she had come. One stood still for a bit, then slowly made her way back to their room. When she entered, she found Jungkook fully dressed, polished and commanding in his presence. He looked at her calmly and said, "Jungkook, there was a party tonight. Be ready. It starts at 7 sharp." And with that, he walked past her and out the door, leaving behind the echo of his words and a room full of silence. One remained where she stood, unmoving. She gave a small nod, though no one was there to see it. Her heart was still racing, but her lips remained sealed. Evening had fallen, casting a golden hue over the estate. One silently dressed immaculately in the gown Jungkook had gifted her, a soft, rose-pink dress that clung to her figure with effortless grace. The fabric shimmered faintly under the light, adding the quiet elegance she carried. Her makeup was subtle but glowing, her hair done with soft wave cascading down her back. A servant entered the room, bowing slightly. "Ma'am, sir is waiting downstairs." One nodded and stood up, smoothing the side of her dress with trembling hands. Her heart had already begun its anxious drumming. Slowly, she walked toward the grand staircase. Jungkook stood at the foot of the stairs, his gaze lifting to meet her the moment her footstep echoed against the marble. His eyes widened ever so slightly. For a fleeting second, time seemed to pause. She looked different, breathtaking. The soft pink hue of the dress complemented her skin like it had been made only for her. With each step she took, the air seemed to shift. Her elegance wasn't loud, but it demanded attention. Jungkook could not look away. His gaze remained locked on her, unblinking, intense, almost as if he was trying to memorize her. When finally reached the last step, Jungkook extended his hand toward her in silence. One hesitated for the briefest moment. Her pulse raced. Then gently, carefully, she placed her hand in his. Their finger brushed, warm, firm, unfamiliar, yet undeniable, connected. They walked out together and slipped into the waiting car. Inside the car, silence hung in the air. Neither of them spoke a word, but it wasn't awkward silence. It was charged, brimming with things unspoken. Every few moments, Jungkook glanced toward the rear view mirror, stealing a quick look at Waning. But she remained unaware, her eyes fixed on the road ahead, trying to calm the storm inside her. Soon they reached the venue. The party awaited, so did something more. Jungkook walked into the grand party hall, holding Wine's hand. The lights were dazzling, the room overflowing with sharply dazed guests. Yet Wine could feel it instantly. It wasn't an ordinary gathering. There was a coldness in the air, an edge to the conversation. Those people weren't just elite, they were dangerous. Men of power, people who whispered command, others obeyed with question. A ripple of anxiety ran through her. Without realizing it, she tightened her grip around Jungkook's hand. He didn't flinch, he didn't say a word. Instead, he led her forward with quiet confidence and introduced her to a few associates. She bowed her head respectfully, not daring to meet anyone's gaze for too long. She remained quiet, her voice cocked somewhere between fear and formality. Soon, someone showed her to a chair. She sat there, trying to steady herself as the party fully came alive. The room thickened with cigarette smoke and the scent of alcohol. Laughter, loud music, and murmurs filled the air. Her stomach turned. Wine felt dizzy, claustrophobic. She looked around, searching for Jungkook, but he was nowhere to be seen. The crowd blurred around her. Panic slowly crept up her spine. She stood up, instinctively needing to find him, and then, from nowhere, Jungkook appeared. Before she could say a word, he gently wrapped his tuxedo jacket around her shoulders. His proximity made her heart race. She could hear her own heartbeat, but then she realized it wasn't just hers. Jungkook's chest was close enough that she could hear his too, rhythmic, strong, unusually fast. Confused, she looked at him. He met her gaze, steady and calm, and simply said, Jungkook, keep it on until we get home. Wine only nodded. Later that night, they returned home in silence. Inside the bathroom, Wine began to undress. As she removed the pink gown Jungkook had gifted her, she noticed a faint stain. Her period had started. Her heart dropped. She had completely forgotten the date. If Jungkook hadn't covered her with his jacket, she should have been humiliated in front of all people. She felt her cheeks burn with shame and unexpectedly gratitude. A warm bloom inside her. She didn't want to admit it, but somewhere deep down, something about Jungkook was beginning to feel safe. One stepped out of the bathroom and found him already in bed, quite calm. She walked over and lay beside him, unsure of what to say, unsure if she even had the word. Suddenly she felt his arms wrap around her from behind. He pulled her close. Her heart nearly stopped. Jungkook, you look beautiful tonight, he whispered near her ear. She didn't reply. She could not. Her cheeks flushed red. Jungkook, does your stomach hurt? He asked gently. Wine, a little, she murmured. His hand slid to her lower abdomen, rubbing softly in slow, soothing circles. Wine's breath caught. After a moment, he turned her around to face him. They were close, closer than ever before. She stared at him, his face just inches away. There was a quiet intensity in his eyes, a softness she had never seen. The rest of the world seemed to fade. His hand cupped her cheek. She closed her eyes, and then his lips brushed against her, gentle, tentative, then firmer. He kissed her slowly, deeply, as if he had all the time in the world. One gasped softly, her finger curling into the fabric of his shirt. She kissed him back, hesitant at first, then with burning hunger. Jungkook responded immediately, his arms tightening around her as the kiss deepened, intense, warm, consuming. And then he stopped. He pulled back slightly, resting his forehead against her, and whispered, Jungkook, sleep. One blinked, surprised, her breath still heavy. For a moment she had thought something will happen, but she said nothing, just nodded, cheeks burning, and closed her eyes. Minutes passed, silence settled in the room, but if someone listened closely, they could still hear the sound of two hearts beating wildly, side by side. Morning came quietly. Wine and Jungkook sat at the dining table, eating breakfast in silence. Not a single word passed between them. She didn't look at him once. Her cheeks still burned from the memory of the last night, the warmth of his lips, the nearness of his body, the softness of his voice telling her to sleep. And now, in the daylight, she could not bring herself to meet his eyes. Jungkook didn't speak either. He ate with quiet composure, his face unreadable. When the meal was over, both of them stood still in silence. One didn't wait. She turned and walked straight toward the nursery. Inside the nursery, soft morning light filtered in through the curtains. The twins were already awake, stirring and cooing in their cribs. As soon as they saw Wayen, their tiny hands reached out for her. She smiled genuinely for the first time that day and went to them, kneeling between the cribs. Their presence was a balm, the momentary escape from the complicated feelings inside her, but then her smile faded. She touched Hazel's forehead. It was hot, much too hot. One's chest tightened. Carefully, she picked Hazel up and checked her temperature. It was high, a fever. Panic slowly settled in. She laid Hazel down gently on a separate cot, distancing her from Leo to prevent the fever from spreading. One sat beside her, watching every little movement, her worry growing with every passing minute. The entire day slipped by like a slow storm cloud. The fever refused to break. Hazel whimpered weakly, her small body flushed and restless. Finally, with no other option, one called a maid. Wayen, go, tell your sir that we need a doctor. Hazel has a high fever. The maid nodded and rushed out of the nursery. Within minutes, a doctor arrived, carrying his bag with professional calm. He examined Hazel carefully, checking her temperature, listening her breathing, and then looked at Wayen with a mixture of concern and quiet honesty. Doctor, she is not seriously ill, just weak, but at this age, formula milk isn't enough. What she really needs is her mother's breast milk. It's vital for her immunity. Wine froze. The words sank in slowly, leaving a strange emptiness behind. She didn't know what to say, how to respond. She simply nodded, trying to keep her expression neutral. The doctor handed her a prescription and quietly left. Medicines were brought quickly. One gave Hazel the first doses, then spent hours soothing the twins until they finally drifted to sleep. Hazel's fever had come down a little, but worry still clung to her like a second skin. That night, later Jungkook came into the nursery. He stood there for a long moment, his eyes moving from Leo to Hazel, then to Wayen. He didn't say anything, neither did she. He just watched them sleep. Wayen stood quietly nearby, watching Jungkook's face in the low light. She noticed something, softness in his gaze, something tender and protective, and yet she still didn't have the courage to ask the question gathering inside her heart. Who is their mother? Where is she? What happened? But she said nothing. She simply observed. Eventually, they left the nursery and walked back to their room, still in silence, but inside her, the question had begun to echo louder than ever. Several days passed. In that time, Hazel had been unwell on and off. Though her fever had gradually faded, it left behind a trace of lingering worry in Wane's heart. But through it all, one thing became clear: Jungkook had begun spending more time in the nursery. He rarely spoke, yet his presence was consistent and comforting. The twins especially seemed to prioritize him in their own innocent way. They had started crawling, and their little hands and knees would carry them across the floor, sometimes toward Wayan, sometimes toward Jungkook, and when they reached him, he would silently pick them up. He never smiled, never expressed his joy out loud, but one saw it. She could sense it in the way he held them, in the fleeting softness in his eyes. He was changing, little by little, and their bond was growing. Between her and Jungkook too, sometimes had quietly shifted. The fear that once gripped her heart had begun to loosen. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. The cold wall between them was thinning. Conversations were still rare, but not impossible. The maids and girls of the household noticed it too. The change in the air, the warmer glances, the shared silences, and they were happy. But no one knew how short-lived this happiness would be for Ryan. That day her heart felt light. She had cooked a full meal, thoughtfully prepared with care and effort. She had asked the head maid about Jungkook's preference, his favorite dishes, how he liked his food seasoned. Wine had put her heart into every plate. Because now she no longer saw their relationship as a duty, she wanted it to grow, and even in the quiet coldness of Jungkook's behavior, she had begun to notice small shift, things she found herself drawn to. She liked him now more than she was willing to admit, but the feelings were real, even if still shy and unspoken. Jungkook too had changed. He spoke a little more now, asked about her day, stayed longer in the nursery. The ice was melting. With a soft smile on her face, Wine stepped toward the living room to call him for dinner. But just as she was about to speak, she heard voices from the slightly open door. She stopped, her breath caught when she recognized them, Jungkook and Ben. Jungkook's voice was low, heavy. Jungkook, I don't know when things will be normal again, when she will wake up. Ben replied with nervous reassurance. Ben, please, don't worry, sir. We have brought the best doctors for the young ma'am. Ma'am will recover, I am sure of it. Jungkook exhaled slowly. Jungkook, I don't want excuses, Ben. I just want her conscious soon. The children are starting to recognize everything now. They are growing. Ben's silence lingered before he responded quietly. Ben, yes, boss, I understand. But it's been so long. She is still in a coma, even after so many treatments. Jungkook, no more delays. His voice was final. One stood frozen outside the door. The word titled beneath her feet. Her heart dropped, a cold rush flooding her chest. Her mind reeled. She? Coma? Young ma'am? The words repeated in her head, echoing like thunder in a quiet sky. Suddenly everything made sense. The hesitation, the distance, the mystery of the twins' mother. There was another woman, and she wasn't gone. She was still alive, unconscious, waiting. One turned and walked away, her vision blurred. The dinner she had lovely prepared now sat untouched, and so did her fragile hope.